Hello and welcome to On the Bench, the fortnightly podcast for scale modelers by scale modelers. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, and all good podcast apps. While you're there, don't forget to mark us as your favourite so that you never miss a show. Fine Scale Modeler is proud to be the official supporter of On the Bench. Fine Scale Modeler is one of the world's most recognised modelling magazines and can be found in all good newsagents or wherever you purchase your magazines. Alternatively, you can go directly to their website, www.finescale.com, and subscribe to get the magazine home delivered, as well as access to their digital edition. Hi, I'm Dave, and welcome to episode 48 of On the Bench. In this episode, Martin Reid's going to be joining us to help us have a chat about modelling clubs, everything you need to know about modelling clubs, from setting one up to joining one, and perhaps looking for that particular club that suits you. A huge round of applause for Charles May, our latest Patreon supporter. If you would like to join the hallowed ranks of Patreon supporters like Charles, simply go to www.patreon.com/onthebench and pledge any amount from $1 upwards. Your ongoing contributions help us to offset the production and publishing costs of this podcast, and they're greatly appreciated by both myself and the team. And now on with the show, and hello and welcome to Ian.
G'day Dave, g'day listeners.
And hello to... Just let me turn your headphones up so can you hear now?
No.
You can't hear?
No.
Yeah, you can hear me.
How about that?
So I can hear now.
No.
You still can't hear?
No.
Oh, hang on.
So you got me working.
Try that. Yeah, that was it. I got you, the right knob. G'day, Julian.
Hello.
And special guest Martin Reid back again. How are you, Martin?
Good. Very, very pleased to be back. Thanks for having me.
So we've been doing since we last saw you. I mean, you were here for the Wingnut Wings episode, which is one of our record episodes, actually, with the amount of people who downloaded and listened to that.
That's
Over
right.
2,500 people, so
I
that's
think
pretty cool.
fair to say anything involved with wingnuts will be popular.
Yeah, absolutely. Just get that microphone right on your mouth there so that people can hear.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better. So, guys, what have you been up to, Ian?
Well, the Shikaku, of course.
Yes.
Excuse me. Managed to finish nearly got the funnels finished. Just got to do a little bit of dry brushing on them and give them a final flat coat of clear.
Yep.
Mounted the wooden deck onto the plastic deck.
Yep.
After grinding away a heck of a lot of details.
Uh-huh.
And halfway through painting the white stripes
Lovely.
on the deck.
No issues?
Oh, of course.
Oh, what's happened now?
Well, since I'm in such a confined space,
Yeah.
like working inside a shoebox, I had the stripes all masked up and had the airbrush all set up and tested the paint to make sure the white was good, and turned around to put the deck back on my bench, and of course had a bit of masking tape hanging over the edge so I wouldn't get overspray. And as I've turned to go back to the airbrush, a bit of the masking tape's caught onto my leg and flipped the whole deck onto the ground, and snapped off the two little wings on the end of the flight deck.
The photo etch wings?
Yep. Oh. So I spent the pretty majority of the day straightening them out.
And of course, Ian, we're laughing at you, not with you.
Of course. Yeah. No, look, I don't blame you. But no, it all seems to be fixed now. So.
Did you get the other photo etch fixed, the one you stood on? Did you get
No,
that?
I couldn't.
Oh, okay.
No, it was beyond repair.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm going to have to go back to using the plastic. Luckily, it's pretty much hidden by the funnel.
Mm.
So you're not really, unless you really look up underneath it, you're not really going to notice it anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. No more purchases?
Oh, just a few more detail sets for the aircraft.
More for the Shikaku?
Yeah, and I've still got to buy 2 more detail sets for the aircraft as well. There's
So-
27 valves.
Yeah.
So I managed to clean up all the valves and all the zeros, 6 zeros and 27 valves.
Yep.
And as I'm cleaning up, I've noticed every single valve has 4 sinkholes. Every single zero has 3. With the zeros, they're like really deep sinkholes, and they're right at the bottom of the air scoop, at the bottom of the front cowl. There's 2 on either side. And they're
So you
really
can't
deep.
hide them.
No, you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to. Even paint it, you wouldn't be able to hide them.
Yep.
And there's one at the bottom in between the flaps on the bottom of the wing with the valves. There's 2 on the side of the fuselage just in behind the engine cowl, and 2 on the fuselage just below the rear section of the canopy. So what I've done is I've painted them all green and then putty over the top of the green.
Okay.
So when I sand it, you're not going to see white from the putty. You'll only see the green. So yeah, it's a bit of work ahead.
Oh. Julian, what have you been up to?
Working on this little 72nd scale Focke-Wulf that I'm building. I managed to paint all the checkering on the nose just fine.
Oh, it's not that.
That's right, yeah.
It's quite
'cause
therapeutic doing the checkers.
You
isn't
had
it?
trouble with the decal, didn't you?
Yeah, it was undersized, yeah.
Yep.
So I ended up having to paint the black and white checker. It's fairly cylindrical, not quite though. It does taper slightly, and then when it curves off at the nose, all of those had to be sort of tapered squares.
So did you paint the whole area white first and then just do the black checkers?
Yeah, white
Yep.
first, then
Yep.
black after.
Yep.
I had to. The tricky part about this checker is that it has to be like radially even,
Yep.
right? So they all have to be evenly spaced to fit. That was the tricky part. So I ended up just sort of like 4.25 mil across for each square that way, and then you can space them out down the nose quite fine. It all worked out. No mistakes. The only sort of sticking point was where a little bit of the white was showing, like a line of white was next to one of the black squares where that met
That's
the rest of
annoying.
the camouflage.
That's very annoying.
Yeah, so I had to come back and mask that over and just spray a bit of like an RLM 76
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
What about you, Dave?
I managed to get some bench time in over the weekend.
Ooh.
Finally carved myself out about 5 hours. So doing more work on my Japanese cruiser, and for the 5 hours I spent there, and it was a solid 5 hours, and you sort of step away from the bench and go, well, I haven't got much to show for that. It's just, and
They eat up time, don't they?
I know. And I'm up to the point now where I'm sort of doing 2 things at once. I'm still building the infrastructure, the superstructure, I should say. And I've just started hacking off the barrels to put on the brass metal barrels on the main armament.
Nice.
So, yeah, getting
Getting
there slowly.
Yep.
And I've got this weekend free. There's no storms or fires or tornadoes or floods
Don't say that too
on the
loudly.
horizon. On the horizon. So I should be right, I think.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Martin, what have you been up to?
Well, I'm in the process of finishing off another Wingnuts kit, and this one's
Oh.
for Model Art for a review.
Yep.
And this is of their last release of last year, the Halberstadt.
Yep.
So that's provided a real challenge because the fuselage on that had how do I describe it? It's a lozenge that's painted onto it the way that it was done in real life. So it wasn't a fabric or anything like that. So they painted it on sort of freeform,
Right.
and then they did a stipple effect over it with a brush to give it that sort of disruptive look. And so trying to replicate that with the airbrush
Yeah.
was a real challenge. Most intense airbrushing task I've done so far. And I'm actually quite happy with it. So
It's a large kit too, isn't it?
it's large-ish.
Yeah.
There's a bit to it, but it's one of those kits that, look, the Wingnut stuff we've spoken about, obviously.
Yeah.
And, the fit and engineering is great and all that sort of thing, but it's also something where a lot can go wrong if you're not careful. And I managed to, somehow, some way, when I was doing the actual lozenge decals where the fabric was applied over the wings and the rudder and all that sort of thing, and I was just getting everything ready to do some final work on those components, and realised I'd applied the tail rudder lozenge onto the wrong one.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I had no way of coming back from that.
No.
So it was a case of just comparing with the part the way it was meant to be. Luckily, I'd used the larger one, so I had to just cut it back
Yep.
and then cut it to the right shape, and then use the leftover decals that I didn't need. Using bits and pieces, piecing all of the lozenge back in place. So,
So you just made it even more complicated for yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but it's come up a treat. So
How's the rigging going on it?
that's this weekend's job.
Okay.
And it'll be finished then.
Oh, lovely.
Cool.
So,
very good.
very pleased with it.
Terrific. Well, before we move on and get into what's new in the modelling world, we've actually got some listener mail that we need to have a bit of a crack at. First of all, good friend of ours, Tony, has written in, and he's after a bit of advice, saying that he built a 1/350 scale USS Hornet 15 years ago, and this is well before he'd invested in display cabinets. So for years it sat on the shelf and has gathered plenty of dust and grime. Years ago, he did his best to clean it with one of those photographer puffer brushes. But when he tried to use his airbrush set on a just obviously pushing air out to try and blow the dust off, it sent a couple of aircraft and PE bits flying across the room. So he's asking, what's the best way to remove dust and grime that's built up on a model?
Well, the best way I can find for him, with a suggestion for him, would be to bite the bullet, remove the aircraft, remove everything else that can be easily removed that's going to fall off.
Finer details.
Finer details, and just use some warm, soapy water. And just give it a good wipe down with some warm, soapy water.
Applied how? How are you going to apply the
Apply it with a brush.
Okay, just a normal paper brush.
And then dab it off.
Okay.
And that way you'll get rid of all that grime. And I remember when I was a youngster, I had a P40, the old monogram P40B, which was the first kit over super detail. It was when, well, I can't remember which company they bought out their photo etch stuff, and I just went nuts on this thing. And then I was in between houses, so I had to for a couple of weeks bunk at my parents' place, and that sat the only place to put that was on a base was in the kitchen on top of a cabinet.
What could go wrong?
And yeah, unfortunately, my mother liked cooking with oil, right? So when it came time to pick it up, it was like not only did it have like this nice sheen on it, but it had dust on it as well. And that was what I found. I just got rid of the rigging wires and anything else, and took the canopy off it, and basically. Just
you actually removed the canopy and everything.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, you got to accept there's going to be some collateral damage, and you're better off being in control of that damage.
Yeah.
And
that's a good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah, if you remove the bits that you know are going to break off or go flying, you can always reattach them. Put them aside, put them in a box,
fair
put
enough.
lid on it, put it aside, clean the thing, and then just,
So
a day or
warm, soapy water, something, like a liquid sort of soap that you use to wash your dishes
dishwashing,
with.
Dishwashing liquid, yep.
And then just dab it dry with a dry brush afterwards.
And guaranteed, as he said, it was painted, 15 years ago or something?
Yeah.
So it would have been painted in enamels.
Well, possibly, yeah.
More than likely.
Yep.
And enamels, well, it's not going to affect the enamels at all.
All right.
But if it's not painted in enamels, do a little test somewhere. Somewhere where you're not going to see it, just to make sure that whatever you're using to clean it isn't going to affect the paint.
That's a very good idea.
Although, the one sticking point is, if it's built that long ago, did he seal his decals?
yeah, good point.
Good point. Oh, well, we'll
Hey, it could be a cool-
we'll
it
have
could-
a go at it.
It could be a challenge for just painting the lines on the deck.
And let us know how you go, Tony. And,
Yeah.
of course, we take no responsibility for anything that goes wrong. It's all on you. Next up from Eric in the US. He wrote to us just today, actually, and he's saying that I like the podcast a lot, especially honest opinions about kit quality and our self-awareness about making modelling mistakes. Well, geez, don't we do that all the time? Anyway, he's looking for a suggested topic, but I thought we'd touch on it today, and he's asking about improving the workflow. He's saying that for him it takes about 1 to 3 years to finish a modelling project, and this is a function of A, making mistakes and having to start anew, B, only being about 1 hour every second evening available to do modelling, and C, trying to live up to the standards he sees in magazines and forums, including aftermarket research and diorama settings. So he's asking, how can I do the work faster so a project can be finished in a finite time? I'm sure other modellers have the same issues. I'm always planning ahead the next project, but that excitement gets deferred while slogging through the current project. A side effect of long build times is as I get close to finishing, I start making compromises because I just want to see it done. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm in that.
Burnout. Yeah.
I get to that too. I
Pure
get to
burnout.
a point
You get
where
burnout.
the model, and in fact, I'm the worst enemy myself because I'll be part way through a project and I'll start another one just to sort of get my creative juices flowing again. So I've got about 6 projects that are on the go at once.
Think how I feel
What? Right?
with the Shikaku.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what, over 6 months I think I've been working on that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, for me, that's a record build. That's a long build. And I've still got at least another 2 months ahead of me
True.
before it's finished.
If I can just jump on one of those points that came out as you read those, is looking at what other modelers do and trying to build to that standard. Now, one of the things when I do my reviews, and it's predominantly wingnut kits of recent years, one of the things I try and call out is that you've got to be able to just get good results that you're happy with, and it doesn't need to be compared to all of these other magnificent models. As good as they are, we don't all have the time, the skill, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think we've got to be careful that we don't rob ourselves of the joy of what the hobby is meant to be.
Absolutely.
Look, many, many years ago, I got caught up in trying to make my kits all perfect and all that. And I remember going to a friend's place, and this was a guy that he built, he pretty much the way he did when he was a kid.
Yeah.
But he had a massive collection of 72nd scale aircraft. He loved it. And one day I was in there and I was just looking and go, you're actually loving the hobby a lot more than me. And I put away those kits for a few months. I literally went down the shop, got a few old kits and just built them as I did when I was a kid.
Yep.
Saved the hobby for me.
Yep.
Don't compare yourself to others. Just enjoy what you do.
And the other thing Eric has got to remember too, I mean, if he's taking 1 to 3 years to finish a model kit, gee, he's getting good value for money with his time, isn't he?
Or he's got a massive stash.
Depends what Eric builds. Like some kits do take a long while to build.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For example, a way to cut a bit of time off is what I do when I'm building, or what I try and do is get everything ready that's going to be the one colour.
Yeah, yeah.
And then just paint all those components that one colour.
Yep.
And that saves yourself a lot of time of having to fire up the airbrush, because firing up the airbrush and painting takes a while.
And cleaning it down.
Cleaning it down and all that.
Yep.
Whereas if for example, you're doing an aircraft like a German 109, well, all the interior bits, the wheel wells, it's all going to be RLMO. The undercarriage is all going to be RLMO too. So basically, you just prepare all that stuff.
Yep.
Clean it up, get it ready, paint it. Then move on to the sub-assemblies with the next colour.
Yeah.
I have a few thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're building 1 hour a day, you probably don't have to clean your airbrush as fully every day.
Yep.
Right? You can afford to do maybe a full pull down on the weekend or something. Right? Also, if you're building, say, putting aside an hour a day, then that means that when you sit down for that 1 hour, whether you've hit a roadblock or something, or a part that you're dreading and not wanting to do, you're going to do it because that's your allotted time, right? Because you're like, oh, what else am I going to do? Just not spend this hour for modelling? Then I'm already behind, and you're going to go watch TV or something. No. Just do your thing for that 1 hour and make sure it's an hour where no one can bug you, right? Maybe not in the afternoon. I know a person who gets up at a ridiculously early hour, like 5 a.m. or something, and he'll model for 2 hours before he goes to work.
No, I couldn't do that. That's
right?
crazy.
It's because it's before his wife gets up.
I didn't see you at my place this morning. Seriously, I was up at that time modelling.
So I mean that's one method, because you got to remove the distractions, right?
Yeah.
And if you get into a routine of doing it every day, then you tend to stick to it, and you make good progress rather than putting things off. And you're like, oh, maybe I won't do it today because I got to go out to the garage and it's where I paint and it's rainy today. And
Or in America, it's blizzard.
Yeah.
But
if you do it every day, then you just get used to dealing with the snow or the rain or
Yeah.
whatever it is, and you just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cutting down on airbrush cleaning time is also a huge factor.
Oh, yeah. Cleaning down the airbrush takes forever.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't take that. It takes me about depends whether I'm putting it in the ultrasonic cleaner.
Oh, I do that once a week.
I reckon it probably about 20 minutes to do a complete strip and clean and and put it back together.
Well, if you only got an hour,
that's
you've already
true.
blown 20 minutes.
Yeah. But then you can be smart like me and have about 3 airbrushes sitting there, 4 airbrushes.
Yeah, but that costs a bit of money.
Well, airbrush prices are coming down where you can afford to have 3 or 4 now. I mean, as low as $40 for a double action now.
Yeah.
And, you get pretty good quality out of them these days.
You're not going to get the quality like out of a Pash or...
Well, Badger had that
high-end.
big sale recently, their $50 sale or something for airbrushes or whatever it was.
Oh, right.
Late last year or early this year. So, there's cheap airbrushes out there, still good quality.
Yeah.
And if you have... And also, that way I can have 3 or 4 airbrushes, but I've got each one's got their own needle, a different size up, so I don't have to sort of change a needle out in one particular brush.
Yes.
So I can just pick it up and go bang.
Also, like a cheap Chinese airbrush that's brand new is probably going to have finer tolerances than your 20-year-old really nice airbrush that you've been using for a lot over the years and that you've been wearing it down.
Yeah.
The bodies on those things are only made out of brass.
I've had a few airbrushes I've had to ditch because I've worn them out.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Because like the needle is metal, steel or whatever, and the body of it's usually brass or aluminium.
Aluminium, yeah.
And whichever the lesser material is the one that gets worn.
Yeah, but the one thing also with Eric, with cutting corners too, you got to be careful cutting corners too, because a good way to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you just need to bite the bullet and just take that little bit longer to make sure you got a finish you're happy with. But
And ultimately,
as Martin said earlier, that's as long as you're happy with the build and you're getting the full enjoyment out of the build.
Yep.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. And ultimately, if it is to be that you do one project that you're happy, satisfied with every 2 or 3 years, if that's your thing, more power to you.
Yeah.
Also, it's good to manage your expectations. Maybe just try aiming for a skill level that's just in front of where you are, rather than something that's far off in the distance.
Well, one thing I like telling people is when they give me but my stuff's not as good as that person's stuff. It's like, well, that person's probably been building for 20 years longer than you. And every kit you build, 90% of the time, the next kit you build is going to be that little bit better.
Well, take your step forward.
That's where the mistakes come in, isn't it?
Learning from your mistakes, that's where it comes in.
That's right,
Yeah, absolutely.
And everyone makes a mistake on every build almost.
Yep.
Or focus your skills on weathering, and then you can hide up all your mistakes.
Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Another quick way, depends what paints Eric's using. If he's using enamels, well, I'd probably change to go to acrylics.
Yeah.
Because acrylic drying time is a lot quicker than enamel.
Or even the lacquer now. That's
lacquers,
that's super quick.
Those I've tried some of those new lacquers, and they dry in about 5 minutes.
God, I am in love with new tomato lacquers. Oh my God, they're just divine.
Yeah, that's what I found. Yeah, because I'm using them with the shikake.
Yeah, I'm using them on my Japanese, and they're just awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an AK Real Colour fanboy.
Yeah.
Yep, I've literally sold all my guns. The lot.
Be still my beating heart.
It had some flat clear.
I'd tell a lie. The only thing I kept was some of the Mr. Metal colours.
Right.
Okay.
Because I had to go overseas to get my latest batch of guns flat clear.
Just a long way to go.
Yeah.
So,
I had to order it in from Hong Kong. So I can't get it.
Yes,
in
I've
Australia.
been loading up on the.
Wow.
They are just the most magnificent paints.
Yep.
I've been using Mr. Paint lacquers, which is, as you guys know. When I was doing the checkers on this Focke-Wulf, because I didn't want that sort of, that turned up lip at the edge of where you've masked, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. So I just sprayed it very lightly with the black on, waited like maybe 20 seconds, and then I apply my second coat. And that's actually a second coat, right? Because it's already dry.
Yep.
So
and that's the same with the Tamiya lacquers as well. That's how fast you can spray over the top of them. It's just awesome stuff.
Yeah, that's why.
Gorgeous stuff.
I'm sold on lacquers.
Yeah, I am too.
Except for the smell.
Hey, man.
What do you? I don't even. I just leave a door open when I spray.
I did. I actually had the.
But you've got an actual exhaust fan.
Yeah,
so
I had the
what do you got
exhaust
to worry
fan
about?
running. Right, I had the exhaust fan running. I had the window open. I had the door open, and it still set off my alarms, my smoke alarms inside. But that was a lot of. That was just over 2 pots of lacquer.
Yeah, but
In
were
one
you
sitting.
like bombing it on? Because
No.
that'll do it, you know.
No, I wasn't bombing it on. Just it's a big ship.
It is a big ship.
Took a lot of paint.
All right, Tony and Eric, I hope that answers your question.
And
So
yeah, I'd just like to know from Eric what he's building.
Yeah, okay. Well, hopefully he'll write back and let us know, and we can report back on it.
Because if we know
next-
exactly what he's building, then we might be able to
Yeah.
get some better shortcuts.
And also, in the future, I'm planning on doing a segment, because we've had quite a few emails about how to deal and model, and so it doesn't clash with your family life. So I
But
think
like me, be single.
well, there's that. But I thought I might get Michelle in and have a chat about that, and 'cause she's coming at it from a woman's point of view, you know, or a
Yeah, but
wife's point of view.
Michelle's one of those rare women, like your wife, Martin, that actually accept the hobby. There's some women out there that will not accept the hobby.
Yeah,
at
but
all.
Michelle does counselling as well, so hopefully we can have a short segment, which might be a special that we'll do, and
Yep.
get Michelle in.
the
And
modelers can get their wives in to get them off their back.
There you go, segment, the modelling wives of Melbourne.
You might not want to let your wife listen to this segment.
Me?
No, not your wife. As in, like the listeners' wives.
No,
this is the
it'll
part
be-
where they
it'll be-
shouldn't.
it'll
Don't
be
let
that-
them hear this part because this is revealing all our
Oh, well, it's dirty secrets.
all the ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's have a look at what's new in the modelling world. And as Ian posted on our Facebook page last week, AK Interactive have announced the release of some new weathering pencils. What do you take on these things, guys?
They look interesting. My big thing is, are they going to be any much different to standard watercolor pencils?
Well, it's funny you should ask that because I saw a guy online who's doing a comparison between the AK and normal proper
Artist
watercolors. And he said the AK ones are as good and are cheaper than the ones you can buy
Oh, well, there you go.
in
Now,
shops.
my understanding, they're made. Now, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but someone was saying that they're made by a company called something like Montmart, or something like that, and they make quality pencils anyway. So
These are the waxy pencils,
Yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah, and you can sort of put them on, and you can use a bit of water to sort of schmooze them around a bit, and
Yeah.
it looks really interesting. And I'm quite keen to get. And it comes in either boxes of 3 or 4 for a specific task, or you can get looks like to be a large box of the entire
thing I
range
like
there.
about the pencil idea is, for myself, I can get a better control out of a pencil than I can using a paintbrush.
yeah, very specific marking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you want specific weathering in specific areas, I reckon these pencils will be the way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's 37 colours, and the box set actually comes with 3 blacks. They're expecting that to be used the most, I take it. But
Okay, I didn't notice that. Good pickup.
yeah, so I'll definitely be getting a set.
Yep.
I'm really loving the look of this stuff, and being a really lazy and superficial modeler, I could go and get good quality artist ones, and they will be a little bit cheaper. These aren't overly expensive.
No.
But I just love the names on there because they're aligned to our hobby. So, like ochre and chipping lead and all that sort of thing. So, fantastic.
Bit like Games Workshop paints.
Yeah,
Colours.
exactly.
Well, it's done by modelers for modelers, isn't it? So
Yes.
got the modelling community, and I think Martin, you've said it a number of times before. Whatever sort of you can do to sort of make things quicker and easier for you when you're modelling, why not?
Well, one of the things, like 18 months ago, I finally was able to get my studio together, a dedicated modelling space. And what I'm finding, I'm enjoying the process and the tools as much as the end result.
Actually, that's what I'm spending all my money on at the moment is tools.
Really enjoying the ability of sitting down and finally being able to have all like nice tools around me and the products and all that sort of thing. Not to get in the way ultimately of producing models, but I'm just loving the process.
Yeah. I'm with you. And it's funny because one of our listeners, Tony, he sent me a circle cutter the other day, the Spay circle cutter.
Yeah, they're great.
You've got one, Ian.
I used mine in anger the other week and it was great.
Yeah, well, I got it out and
Anger?
used it on a post-it note the other day, and I was just blown away by how wonderful this particular tool is. And I'm thinking,
The quality of their stuff is amazing.
Because
yeah.
on the front of the on the in between the deck and the the flight deck and the main deck of the Shikaku. There's on the front wall. There's 2 large life buoys,
Yep.
and they're already moulded into the plastic.
Oh, okay.
And being round,
Yes,
I thought, well, that's
yes.
going to be a bugger to mask to paint them red and white. So I just used a circle cutter and just cut.
All of a sudden, it's not a problem.
Bob's your uncle.
It took 5 minutes and they were done,
Yeah.
masked up, ready for paint.
Yeah, I recently picked up their etch folder.
Yes.
Now, I'm probably one of the last people around to actually... I've never had one. Never used one.
How have you gotten through life without an etch folder?
With great difficulty. with lots of interesting bends in my photo etching covered by tarps. But, yeah, finally pick one of those up. Again, it's like now I'm looking for etched parts that I can fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just so that I can use it. And even just simple tools like there, and Ian will attest to this, they do a couple of sets of tweezers.
Oh, they're brilliant tweezers.
Oh.
And one of them is like super fine, like
Yep.
really strong, like to the point where each set is individually ground, the ends of them, to make sure that they're right.
Wow.
And they come with these little rubber caps. It's not a marketing ploy
Yeah.
for nice packaging. You need to put them on there because if you grab them
The wrong way.
the wrong way, you will
You'll
impale.
bleed.
You'll impale your fingers.
Yep.
You'll bleed.
Yep. I have seen Ian's pair, and they are the real deal.
Yep.
I mean, I previously I was always a big big on tweezers. Like a lot of people persevere with really crappy
I know.
tweezers.
We've all done that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, especially the kind with teeth. No, get rid of the
No.
ones with teeth. You
Yeah.
don't need that. You know, all it needs is a little bit of glue on your part, and you pick it up with those things, and suddenly you got like teeth marks
Yes.
in your part.
They've,
You know,
they've still got the ones that they pinch from their mum's makeup.
yeah. That's the one. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, those tweezers are far and above. I currently use the Tamiya ones, the angled nose
Yes, I know ones,
tweezers.
yep.
And I go through them. I've bought more than one because
Ah.
they wear out.
Yeah.
I don't know how they wear out, but I notice that after a while they don't pick up things as good as they used to. They're not as precise. I don't know what it is.
A lot of metal parts you use or just plastic?
Mostly plastic, but still,
Okay.
I don't know what it is. It's maybe it's just
Your grip's too tight.
because sometimes I have to scrape like a bit of like super glue off the end of it and stuff, and I don't know. Somehow it just it loosens up and it's not not as good as it used to be.
And it may also
It's
be that...
not your sister sort of pinching him to pluck her eyebrows or something, is it?
No, my sister lives elsewhere.
Okay. Just checking.
It may also be that the metal's actually a little bit soft, and that's what makes them so good for picking things up. There's that little bit of give and
Yeah.
pliability
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah,
and as you're finding that, that eventually wears away.
Although I wonder what the lifespan is on those ones that you've got, because they're smaller and more
Yep.
critical, right?
Yep. But we'll find out.
Yeah, well, we'll.
Okay, IBG Models have announced their March releases, and they've got some wheeled tracks and wing thingies and trucks out at the moment. So the first one is in 1/35th scale, an RO Italian truck, the cargo version.
Interesting.
I'm trying to think. I've never built an IBG model before.
Me
Any of
neither.
you
No.
guys?
It's a Polish company. I've built one of their kits. It was pretty good. It was simple but good. I know someone else who built one and it was filled with quite a few inaccuracies. So beware.
Right.
So this Italian truck is a 6.5 ton 4x2, which was called King of the Road apparently, or simply Giant by the Italian soldiers who used it, and it was used in the Royal Italian Army in World War II, serving all theatres of the war, Russia, Libya, the Balkans, and also I said Russia already, didn't I?
Yes, you have.
There you go. Look, what I like about this particular company is they're doing different things that the mainstream companies aren't doing. So this will attract a lot of interest. For example, the next one that they've announced for March is the Type 2 HOI Japanese medium tank in 1/72nd scale. And I'm struggling to think of anybody's actually done this before in this scale.
don't.
You know who'd know, wouldn't you?
Oh, like you might be able to get it with Model Collect or something
Yeah.
like that because they do
Yeah.
everything right. But a lot of their stuff is armored cars and other wheeled vehicles. A few other things in there. Usually 72nd scale, but sometimes they make it to 35th scale as well.
Right. And finally, they've announced again, I've never heard of this aircraft, PZL 23B
Carras.
Carras which was a Polish-built aircraft, but it's showing this in Romanian markings.
Yeah.
So it was designed as a Polish light bomber and reconnaissance aircraft, and designed in the early 30s by PZL in Warsaw. And during the interwar period, the Polish High Command placed considerable emphasis on the role of armed reconnaissance aircraft. And so to meet that need during 1931, PZL decided to embark on the development of this particular aircraft.
It's one of those aircraft that's so ugly it's appealing.
Yes, and it sort of reminds me, the front bit reminds me of a Lysander.
Yes.
The undercarriage reminds me of a Stuka. The rear end reminds me of a Dauntless dive bomber. It's sort of a whole sort of mixture all rolled into one.
Well, it's got a machine gun on top and the bottom.
Yeah.
At the back there.
I didn't notice
It's
it.
got
It does too.
gondola at the bottom.
Oh, yeah. So this kit comes with 6 markings for all Romanian aircraft, actually.
Of
And,
course.
what's that? Is that Romanian down
Yep.
there as well? It is too. So for something different in your model collection, definitely go and have a look at this.
What scale?
172nd.
72nd.
Yeah. And lastly, for what's new, we've got 2 new Panzer Commanders released by Alpine Miniatures. These guys come in 1/35th scale, and they're full figures and designed to actually sit in the turret, so they're sort of just poking out the top.
As with Alpine, they're really nicely sculpted.
Oh, of course. And for those of you who really enjoy doing your, or looking for something to add a bit of extra dimension to your armour build, I'd highly recommend that you have a look at these and have a crack at sort of
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've actually ever built a tank model where I haven't actually at least had one figure with it.
Mm. Well, if you're not the kind of person who normally puts figures with your tanks, you could just buy this one, paint him up, and then have him just so that you can put him in any tank that you have. Right?
Yeah. For photography purposes.
In my experience of building armour, which is extensive.
Well, half-built one.
No, it's built. It just needs painting.
That's half-built, though.
It's
That's
not.
half-built.
Half-built, so it's fully built, just unpainted.
Yes.
So
And
how's
how long's it been unpainted for?
Next subject. I think that we'll move on now. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back with our main subject. Oh, before I do, you guys got anything new that you want to know about?
Was it Wingnut Wings has got a...
What was that? Wingnut Wings announced something.
2
didn't
new
they?
Gothas.
Yeah, for their 10th anniversary release, because Thursday next week, the 4th of April, marks their 10th anniversary. And the incredible Gotha G1 bomber and the seaplane version.
And I still believe that with the Gotha G1, they've got to give you a little figure of Dick Dastardly and Muttley.
Yes.
Because it definitely
It's
looks
one of
like
those sort of
something
aircraft,
out
isn't
of
it?
Catch the Pigeon.
It does. It's
Well,
great.
just to show you just what a madman I am. Today, what did I get in the post that I ordered off eBay?
What?
The DVD of Dick Dastardly and Muttley.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, what a great
So I've
cartoon
got
series.
all 17 episodes landed today.
Oh, brilliant.
And this Gotha G1 just looks like it should be out of that show. So, getting one of those and painting it purple or something like that and doing the figures, it's a must-do at some point. But it's an interesting aircraft, not overly well-known, I'd have to say, except for the real enthusiasts.
So try and explain it to the listeners who perhaps haven't seen a Gotha before. You got the lower wing in which you've got the undercarriage and the engines mounted, and then you have a bracing systems which go up to the upper wing, and that's where the fuselage is actually mounted. So there's a
So the lower wing actually hangs below the fuselage.
Yeah.
Literally, and the engines all hang below it.
yeah.
Correct. So the design ethos in that was that the reason why they hung it underneath was to have the 2 engines as close as they possibly could, so that if one failed, you had less of a yaw effect, pulling
so
the
yeah,
aircraft
asymmetric.
around.
Yeah.
So the problem was that it left, particularly the gunners at the front, very exposed. But mad-looking aircraft, absolutely superb. And the Gotha UWD, which is and there was only ever one of them made. So an interesting thing for them to do this. It was a prototype, different engines on floats with the seaplane capability, but it was used operationally from a test perspective, but actual operations dropping bombs. So A beautiful looking aircraft in a really, really mad, crazy way.
Wow.
And the other new thing,
Yep.
which Martin's actually ordered for me himself, is some figures.
Yeah, so from Russia, a company called KWD, if I remember correctly, they've released for fellow heavy metal fans out there familiar with the Iron Maiden album from a couple of years back, Matter of Life and Death. And on that album, the cover art is of a war scene with the band's mascot, Eddie, and 5 other soldiers.
Undead soldiers.
Undead soldiers, yep, skeleton-looking dudes.
And Eddie's done up like a US tank commander.
Correct. So you,
And it's just awesome-looking figures.
So it's all
1/35th scale.
all 6 figures, and you can recreate the cover art from that album.
Well, you guys are crazy.
Yep.
Certifiably insane,
Correct.
I believe, is the term.
Totally agree.
All right, well, we'll leave the insanity just there. We'll have a quick break and we'll be back to talk about model clubs very shortly. Okay, and we're back to have a chat about modelling clubs. Modelling clubs, it's one of those sort of things in our hobbies where you're either a member or you're not a member, and if you're not a member, it's because either there's geographical issues or you don't find a club that you necessarily fit into. And for those of us who are in clubs, well, I've got to say it's just a great way of having fellowship with other like-minded people, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
And learning.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Absolutely. And you have to take the lumps with it as well. It can bring out the best and the worst in others and yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a whole range of clubs you can go and have a look at in your area. The best way to see if there is a club in your area is just type in IPMS, which is International Plastic Modellers Society. And it originally started in the UK back in 1963, I think. Quickly followed by, in 1964, it was in Australia, and also the US followed suit as well.
Yeah, I know that we're one of the oldest chapters.
Yes. And as I said, just go to IPMS, just type that into Google or whatever your search engine you use, and you'll be able to click on your country and it'll list a whole heap of model clubs in your specific area.
Alternatively, because there are plenty of model clubs not associated with IPMS.
Yep.
If you've got a local model club, you might be able to go down there and ask them if there's any model clubs in your area.
Well, in fact, there are a lot of...
Oh, you mean model shop?
Yeah.
Certainly
Probably
the IPMS one in Australia, when I clicked and had a look at that, it actually listed non-affiliated clubs as well. So it'll actually show non-affiliated modelling clubs. So I thought that was interesting and really good too. So
I think we're very lucky here in Melbourne, is it? And I think probably because we've got the Australian Model Expo here, and that is a community effort, a modelling community effort.
Yep.
That a lot of the clubs do get together, and it's about promoting the hobby.
Yes, absolutely. So if you don't find a club, so let's talk about some of the weird aspects of clubs, and then we'll sort of move forward as to how to start a club up if you indeed want to do that yourself. So most clubs, certainly that I've been a member of, have a fairly sort of, I wouldn't say restrictive, but they follow certain rules, don't they?
Yes.
So you've got your model rules in which, you know, how you vote your executive team into, like the president and the treasurer and the secretary and all that sort of stuff. And you have minutes of the meeting and all that sort of stuff, which is generally follows sort of your country's rules in regards to how you set clubs up. And I'll talk about the different ways or things or pitfalls you can look out for if you are thinking of actually starting a club. But that might necessarily sit with you, or indeed even the members in a particular club might not be your cup of tea. Because let's face it, we're all individuals and got different tastes and needs and wants. And
I think what you're dealing with people that are artistic, creative, so you've got some interesting ingredients to
interesting characters, let's say, at some clubs for sure.
Yeah.
And that can sort of grate against some people, and I can understand that. And it's...
I've graded against a lot of people over the years.
And it's funny because I've been members of clubs, not just in the modelling sector, but also in other parts of my life as well. And it's always interesting to see that the same sort of issues you get in other sort of non-modelling clubs sort of have the same issues in those particular clubs as well. So it might be around politics and stuff that gets into it, and just sort of ruins it for me personally.
Well, I think specific to model clubs is that models tend to be a bit more introverted on the overall, right? Because it's it's a hobby you do by yourself for the most part, right? In a quiet room.
Yeah, it's a fair call.
So I find that communication is pretty poor between modelers. There's a lot of misunderstandings that go on.
Oh, look, I'd suggest to you there's misunderstandings that go on at all different types of clubs and associations.
Yeah.
It's not just in modelling, in the modelling world. Trust me.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to sort of localize it to model clubs.
What it is I think that some people, and as I said, I've seen this in other associations and clubs and stuff like that. Them actually being a member of that club, it's part of their life and a part of their reason for getting up in the morning, and they become extremely, what's a word for it?
Invested.
Passionate.
Yes, and that can cause the issues, and that's where the issues come up, where these people don't have anywhere else to go apart from this particular club.
To your point, if you want to get really deep about it, what I've found over the years is that you will come across people who, unfortunately, will have other aspects of their life that they're not all that happy with.
Yes.
And this is something that, and particularly if they're good at it.
Yep.
It's a replacement for other aspects of their lives that they wish were different.
Yes, 100%. And also the politics of the club can drive some people nutty as well, and batty, and so that certainly drives me around the twist when I sort of see the politics sort of come up, and I see it in other areas of my life as well that I do, both professionally and non-professionally. Yep. The politics of it can just spill over and just ruin what was once upon a time a fantastic association of people.
And I think your politics and your administration really branch out into two areas. And one of them is people wanting that group of people, that club, to follow a certain, themes or standards or whatever. And the other is just a pure governance. And I've had my own issues over the years in a couple of groups where, to put it nicely, people that have been in leadership roles have not governed it well.
Yep.
And then when you're particularly in an incorporated body, you've got a responsibility, because if you're running events and things like that, and you find yourself in a situation where something goes wrong, then you potentially are putting the members' welfare on the line. And if that club is sued because of an accident, now that could be someone coming along to a club meeting. Yep. It could be an event you hold if you've got a display or a competition or something like that. And you have to make sure that everything is absolutely right. You've got a responsibility. And this is where, look, it's a hobby.
Yep.
But there's also a lot of hard work. No, actually, I'll retract that. It's not actually a lot of hard work. It's a bit of hard work and consideration that must go in order to have fun.
Yes.
And if you're not prepared to do that, or you're not in a group that's prepared to do that, you've got to reconsider being part of it.
Absolutely. But there was the point, I mean, I was always crying out for there to be a, and this comes back to special interest groups. So within the modelling world, there's special interest groups. I think you're involved with the special interest groups, a special interest group yourself, Martin.
Yep.
I kicked off one that was just for ship modelers, and rather, it's SHIP.
I was going to say,
in case the word didn't come out correctly. But I didn't want to go down the path of having a club or having club rules or anything like that. So what I did was I just put up on Facebook, hey, if you build ships, come along to this particular pub on this particular date. You all have an interest. Come along to this particular pub on this particular date. And we used to sit down and order a meal, have a few beers. I spoke to the publican. He was quite happy just to have set a table aside for us. And we used to bring some kits along and just sit and have a beer and just have a good time.
Yeah, but your governance behind that was that you were in a place that, from a liability perspective, it was all covered. So if someone tripped over or whatever,
Exactly right.
you were in an establishment whereby buying a meal, having something to drink.
Yep.
You were a customer, therefore you were covered.
Yes.
Therefore, the people that came, I was one of them, and Ian.
Yep.
We would come along. That was fine.
Yep.
It's not that difficult.
No, that's right. And so you can go and do things like that. But I think when you sort of decide to move, or the location of where you meet to, say, a public area, such as a public library, for example, that's a classic example, or a church hall, then you've really got to start going down the track of looking at limited liability and incorporation. And also there's tax implications in some countries as well.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to sort of set up a club, and we'll look at the US first of all. You've got your Internal Revenue Service has got some rules that actually govern social clubs. They're entitled to tax exemption under Section 501c7. So for those of you in the US, you need to have a look at that if you want to be classified as a non-profit status. In Canada, the Revenue Office in Canada offers details on the definition of non-profit and tax implications. So just go to the Canadian tax website and you'll type in the words. Well, in fact, I've got the address here. It's www.cra-arc.gc.ca. And that'll take you to the website where you can sort of have a look and talk about that or read up about that. The UK has some very similar to Australia, I think, in a lot of their stuff. So they talk about unincorporated associations where members have voting rights and they can be charitable or not, and they can be not incorporated. Thank you. I couldn't get that word out. So in the UK, a large groups fall into that category, sometimes without knowing it. To set up an unincorporated association, your group simply needs to draw up a constitution, setting out the rules in which it can be run. Now, in a lot of countries, if you just type in your local state that you live in or province, just type in setting up a social club, and it'll bring up what the rules are that apply to you in your particular part of the world. And it's important that you sort of have a look at that and follow those rules if you want to go down the road of actually incorporating or having an unincorporated association. Simply because you're going to need to do that if places such as churches or public libraries or whatever are going to allow you to actually run a club meeting in those particular places.
Yeah, so you need to be properly incorporated so that you can get your insurance, and in the unfortunate event of something going wrong, you don't want to be in a situation where your insurance company then comes to you and says, all right, well, we've done a search and you've not been following your requirements.
Yep.
Therefore, you're not covered. We do not have to pay out on this. And then your membership list becomes a hit list. You're no longer in a position of having limited liability.
Yep. And that's particularly important when you're starting to look at doing things with your club, like growing your club and displaying what you do to the general public. And that's in the way of having club displays or model shows, running a model show, as well as things like swap meets and all those type of really good things that we enjoy being associated with clubs for.
Yeah, and I mean, another area that is starting to become popular, I'm a member of two clubs here in Melbourne, IPMS Australia and Warbirds Aviation Modelling Group. Now, with IPMS, for a number of years now, we've been having what we call band camps, where we go away out in the middle of the bush and we hire a place and we spend 3 days smelling Tamir thin, drinking port, and the occasional model is built.
Yes.
So you've got to be considerate of those requirements as well. It's a heck of a lot of fun, but there's a bit of work that goes in the background to make sure that it It is fun and stays fun.
Well, let's talk about the fun things about being in a club. What are the advantages of doing that?
I think for
Well,
me,
meeting like-minded modelers.
Yes,
For
absolutely.
starters.
Yeah.
Learning new techniques.
Yep.
Seeing how a guy does a particular way of doing his canopy and doesn't use super glue to glue it on.
Yep.
Yeah.
All those sorts of things.
and you're never in the hobby long enough to stop learning.
Oh, absolutely.
Always something new.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
So you have band camps where you go away and you spend the whole weekend there.
Absolutely.
That's a great idea.
And we did that last year as well for Warbirds. We went down to Phillip Island, or San Remo to be specific. And it was just an opportunity for the guys to sit around a table, like doing some serious modelling,
Yep.
but just talking rubbish, having a laugh. You get to know your modelling friends a little better.
Yep.
Sometimes you get to know them too well, but that's a whole other topic. But I'll give you an example. It would be about 18 months ago. The other thing was we have model build days as well, which is like a truncated version of it. And one of my long-term modelling mates, he was sitting there with this little instrument that he'd made applying super glue. And all he'd done was just got a pin, ground down the end of it, put it in the end of an old paintbrush.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, what are you doing? Because I also noticed that he was getting a lighter out every now and again and just torching the end of this thing. And I asked him, what are you doing? And he said, oh, it's just my super glue applicator. And he showed me, and it was just perfect. It was just so simple. And it's probably been around for years, but it had just passed me by.
Yep.
And so that was worth going.
Yep.
Because I'd always had dramas. I'd either not get enough super glue on or it would be flooded.
Yep.
So so I went home and made my own.
Yep.
And perfect.
I enjoy the particular club I'm a member of. It's just great. So you can go there and you can talk rubbish. You can take the piss out of each other without anybody getting offended.
Well,
90% of the time, anyway.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, our club is very, very informal.
Yeah,
Very, very casual.
absolutely.
It's almost more like a social club with a good dose of modelling in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the type of atmosphere I enjoy, just going along and, and modelling is just part of that sort of make-up and discussion. And in fact, that particular club, they do modelling each night or each time they do a meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some people are there until 3 a.m. in the morning still building, aren't they, Julian?
Yes, they are.
But I think it's an important point as well. If you're someone that's looking for a model club, you do have to do a little bit of shopping.
You do.
Because it's got to fit your personality, what you're looking for. Look, you could be a deadly serious person that just wants to meet with the best modelers, and it's really just a lesson every time you go. They're not wrong for wanting that. But if they try and move into an informal club and then ruin the fabric of the club because it's got to be serious and we've got to do this, we've got to do that, that's a problem.
Yeah. And that's picked up on a good point too. So when you first step into a new club, you've got to sort of get the vibe of the club, how it works, and it's up to you to fit into the social fabric of that club.
Yeah, the dynamic of the club.
Exactly right. You can't sort of walk in there with expectation is that everybody or the club's going to fit around you.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to be able to offer some suggestions politely.
Yep.
And if, so long as they're then polite back to you and say, well, yeah, we hear what you're saying, but that's just not what we're about.
Yep.
Walk away with a smile on your face going, oh, that's a pity.
Yep.
And I'll keep looking. Or then that leads into what we were sort of talking about before.
Setting up your own. Association or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Exactly right. But it's an important breeding ground too for learning new skills, without a doubt. I mean, I've learnt so many things just by going along to club meets. How do you do that? How do you do this? And a lot of clubs will do things like they'll have a night or whenever they meet, they'll have a particular specialist in their group will talk about how to apply decals, for example, or another one will demonstrate how to do weathering. And so you can all sort of huddle around the table and learn the dark arts of weathering.
Yep. And it could be along the lines as well of some people, they do like the social side of it and to be able to talk about what's new or just general chit-chat.
Yep.
because they might be in a situation at home where nobody likes what they do as a hobby. There's no support. It's tolerated at best. And then to be able to catch up with other modelers depending on the club, whether it's fortnightly, monthly, or whatever the case may be.
And in our particular one, we usually bring our new tools along to sort of show off, and
anything new. Yeah.
and people go, "Oh, gee, that's great! I'll have to get one of them."
I'm showing progress. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, showing your progress in your models. That's another big thing. Get criticism. I mean, polite criticism when and where it's
Constructive.
needed. Yeah,
Constructive criticism.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it can be good to bring your model along. Go, I saw what you were doing last week. Here's my model. I need to do this, which is similar. How would you suggest I go about it?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
That's
Yep.
always good.
It is, and you get lots of people who can offer that in a sort of friendly way as well.
Also, it can actually push you to finish models, which kind of ties in on what we were talking earlier. If you're having trouble finishing models, but you're attending a model club, you see that Friday night or whatever it is that your model club meeting date is coming up, and you're like, oh, I kind of want to finish the thing before then so I can show everybody my finished model.
Yeah. And it can expand your modelling horizons. I know in the early days, and like we're talking the early 90s now, at IPMS when I first joined, with the Modeller of the Year there, to be eligible, there was a competition at each meeting.
Yep.
And aircraft, AFEs, dioramas, whatever the case may be. And you had to enter at least 4 of the categories and each category was repeated through the course of the year. You had to, if I remember correctly, it was something like 4 categories, and you couldn't enter any more than 3 into one particular category. So it expanded. Now I went in as an aircraft modeller, and that's all I modelled at that point. But loving a good competition, I thought, all right, well, I'll build a car. I'll build some AFVs. I learnt a lot about the hobby by sort of working on these different sort of models, and also I learnt new techniques, and it just opened up my modelling horizons. And I think that's one of the good things. But if you're a very, very specific aircraft, AFE, ship, civil vehicles, whatever, then it might be that to go into a general modelling club, because I've seen this as well, is that people will sit there and they're bored because someone's talking about aircraft, they love their AFEs, and that can create disharmony in a group too.
That's where the special interest groups come in.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And if there isn't a special interest group in your area, well, go and start one up. You just never know how many people around your area that actually model.
Yeah.
Well, that was back
You'll be surprised.
Back in the mid-90s. Now, I had no issues with IPMS, but I loved Axis aircraft of World War II. That's how Axis Eagles came about in 96. And we, as part of that, I thought you needed to have a competition to go with it.
Yeah.
And, approached Moorabbin Air Museum, and we worked together, and Big Wings, Little Wings, and it became Wings, which is still running today. No. Hang on, they've reopened that?
I have no idea.
And then sort of broadening the scope of what we're talking about with the competitions, again, a great way, and competitions and displays, a great way to see other people's models, and you go, wow, that looks great. I wonder how he or she did that. And you can connect with other people. That's exactly how our friendship started, or my friendship with Ian came about, from Wings.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And Ian's regretted it ever since.
Yes,
I keep spending his money. Like I email him, look at these great figures of Eddie from Iron Maiden.
Thanks, Martin. You like making me spend my money.
So what's the way we can continue to foster the club and make the clubs grow and sort of display them to the outside
Well,
world?
the best way I find is a lot of people have trouble when they try and join new clubs. Is some of these clubs, when they get well established, they become like an old boys club.
Oh, yeah, very clicky.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for them to accept a new member. So if you got a club and someone new comes in, don't look at them like there's some clown that's come off the street with 2 heads. Welcome them.
Yep.
Welcome. Talk to them. Make sure everyone in the club has at least 5 minutes time chatting with this person. Ask them what their interests are. Show them if the same interests as you are. Yeah, let's compare notes. You've got to. The one thing I've noticed is a lot of clubs out there that it's the same people.
Yeah.
And when those people retire or die off, the club dies.
Yep.
Although having said that, I think I can recall in our club, I mean, there's...
Well, our club next year is hitting 25 years.
Yeah, and there's we're still getting the new people sort of trickling in through the door.
Yep.
Yeah.
New people come in, other people leave.
I think what the established model clubs are missing out on and need to sort of get their hooks into is somehow grab hold of the new generation that are coming through that are growing up on Gundam and World of Tanks stuff. How we go about that and do that, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
But certainly that's where the future is.
Definitely.
And I've got no idea how we do that.
It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of models that appeal out there that sort of appeal to people who watch certain movies or play certain games, right? But the problem with that is, movies and games have people in them. People means if you're going to get into modeling from that, you're going to be painting figures, which is a very specialized form of modeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
There's no good answer to that, to be honest. I mean, it's a niche hobby to begin with, and people who are into it are rare, I suppose you could say.
Well, the main thing with the club is you've got to make it fun. When it stops being fun is when people stop going.
Yeah, exactly right.
And I remember, I don't know if you still have with Wings, but I remember when you had Axis Eagles, you had this competition, Build-A-Bitch. And what it was, you had to find the worst kit possible.
Yeah.
Put it in the stash, and they had like a raffle, and you had, I think, was it 2 or 3 months?
Yeah. So we do that like in Warbirds, which is what Axis Eagles has become. Exactly that. Build-A-Bitch. So we've got horrible kits. You randomly get it. You have no choice. It's just a random. You pull a number.
Yeah.
And
I remember that rubber Frank model kit. And I mean, it was made out of freaking rubber.
Yeah. That same glossy plastic that water pistols and that are made out of.
But rubbery. Yeah. It was rubbery. It was you could bend it and it just popped back into shape.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
No glazings on the canopy.
Sure wasn't made out of latex.
It could have been, but I think that ended up becoming the trophy.
That is. Yeah,
we mounted it on a spring inside a glass cabinet trophy sort of thing. So when it just wobbles around there, no decals, stickers. It was just the worst thing.
See, I wonder if there'll come a day when the Build-A-Bitch thing can't exist anymore, because the only kits that will have survived will be ones made in the new era that are designed with CAD and.
Yeah. And those kits will be worth that much because they're so old.
Julian, so long as we got swap and sells, we'll find horrible kits.
Yeah.
As long as they keep getting passed around and no one builds them.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
A big part of certainly the hobby scene here in Melbourne it revolves around the annual Model Expo.
Yep.
And that's sort of the big ticket item, which I think is still the largest hobby show in the Southern Hemisphere. And I don't mean to have a crack at any of our interstate listeners or overseas listeners, but it just is what it is.
Yep.
Wasn't that many countries in the Southern Hemisphere.
There's a couple. Do you know we've got listeners all the way in South America? There's a couple of... there's one in Chile. I think there's 2 in Argentina. So if you're listening to us from Chile or Argentina, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Just send us an email to onthebench64@gmail.com. I'm always intrigued about these other countries where English isn't their first language and they're happily listening to the podcast.
Yes.
So.
Plus you get some really cool-looking Corsairs from Latin America.
Oh, you do.
Yes.
In fact, I was listening the other day. It wasn't, I'm digressing here. The last time the P-51 was used in combat was in South America, about 1985 or 1975, I think.
Really?
Yeah, it was that late. So
It's the only place where Corsair went against Corsair.
Oh, was it really?
During the Soccer War.
Ah.
Where you had those, the jungle camouflaged Corsairs going up against
They had some interesting wars there in South America, didn't they?
I've got a book at home on Latin American air wars, and it's every month, at least once a month, I flick through it and have a bit of a read, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've totally gone us off topic.
We do that a bit. We do that.
So I was talking about the Model Expo.
Expo.
So, and that's an opportunity for the clubs here in Melbourne. And I don't know how it works in the rest of the world, like at Telford or at Heritage
Well, they do
Con.
have this. They do have their group displays.
So do they? Obviously, do they have their club? Do they go along and the club does a specific display for that year? Oh, they do. Okay, all right. So that's a big thing for us here in Melbourne, where the club sort of decides, well, what are we going to do next year for the expo and how we're going to go and promote ourselves and display our talents to our peers and the general public as they come through the door.
Well, it's an interesting one because I think when you look at putting on a club display, there are 3 considerations for the club. And you, in my view, this is just my humble opinion, you're promoting 3 things.
Whenever you have been humble.
I'm also a liar. You're promoting 3 things.
Yep.
The hobby,
Yes.
the club,
Yes.
and the event.
Yes.
The event itself.
Okay.
Because the whole point is that, not the whole point, but one of the key points is that you want to make, particularly general public visitors that come in and pay their money, you want to entertain them
Yes.
and go, wow,
Yep.
awesome. Not just, well, here's something that little Jimmy or Joni, can't be sexist, encourage them to do. Looks like a great hobby rather than just simply, if they're going to be inside, I'd much rather them doing something like this than sitting on the computer or whatever.
I do both those
all
things.
the time. Yeah. And interestingly, how most of us do in the hobby are doing a lot more computer time researching. But anyway, so I think what order you prioritise those isn't probably such an important issue. But I think when you put something on, you're wanting to do that. One, out of, if look, your club is the most important thing to you, out of respect for the event, you want to put on something good for them as well. You want to put something on good to promote the hobby. I think that's a generally given one. And I think if you have that view in mind, then it's about bringing it back into the club to say, right, what's going to work for the club? One of the things that we've been doing for the last few years with Warbirds is that when we're looking at possible themes, it's a case of, right, we want to be in a position where if we were to put the display on at whatever time we're talking about it, tomorrow, we want at least half of those models there. Because some of the biggest stresses that I've seen, I knew there'd be an evil laugh in the back, is when people commit to do things and then life gets in the way, other priorities for them personally come into play, and you're left with a few poor bunnies then whose hobby is impacted having to fill those gaps. And that's a really good way. No, let me rephrase that. That's a really constructive way to be destructive.
Yes.
To the fabric of your club. So, you know, that's the...
It can add a lot of tension in the club when that happens.
That's the heavier side. The other element that we like to bring into our displays is that we're not trying to put on, with whatever the theme may be, oh, look at us, we're all master modelers. If you want to know who we are, just look at the people getting the first prize trophies.
Yeah.
We try to have an array of skill levels on display proudly. Because if you're trying to attract people into the club, you don't want people go, oh my goodness.
You want to display your mistakes to make you more
real.
Open and real and human, yeah.
Yeah, and that at the end of the day, if you don't have the skills or you just want to throw models together and you get a kick out of it, I was talking the story before, you know, someone that I knew years ago, then fantastic. You don't have to be in a position where you're going to pull a first or get a trophy, some sort of recognition every time you build something. Because I've seen modelers who model for that. They're not very happy people.
No, they're not.
And they're not loving their hobby because nothing they do is good enough. And to me, they've totally missed the point.
It's interesting because I have felt a bit of pressure from this year in regards to I was supposed to build a couple of aircraft carriers, but for want of issues I've had with the aircraft carriers for the club display this year, which came up in June, they're not going to be finished.
Yep.
And I was getting really stressed out about this, and I thought, no, you know what? I was going to say, guys, no, I can't have the carriers in this year. I've still got 3 other, and the 4th one I'm building now, which even that's looking doubtful whether that'll be finished or not. But you know what? If it doesn't get finished, it doesn't get finished.
Yeah.
Well, our club doesn't really have those kind of pressures involved.
No, it's Julian. I was putting pressure on myself. I felt pressure on myself to, step up to the mark. But you know what? If I can't do it, I can't do it. And I felt myself, and it was actually keeping me away from the bench. Those sort of self-imposed pressures. So I'll just let it go now.
Yeah, you have to. And I mean, look, occasionally you'll have a display, and I can talk to you tonight or today about something that we're doing. We've actually got 2 displays at Expo this year. So we've got a general jets one.
Yep.
So the only consideration there for the members is that we need to know at least a couple of weeks out what you've got, purely because the way that we like to present as best as possible is do a flyer so that people can pick up a flyer rather than try and read all of the detail. So I think this is one of the considerations.
That's a good idea, actually. So does each kit just have a number, and then that number corresponds on the flyer that people can read
a number
about?
And in large enough font what it is. Now, we've done this a couple of times, and we're going to do it this year for the Jets display.
Yeah.
And because one of the things that I've seen on some displays, they are absolutely superb. And particularly when you consider the ageing demographic, and I put my hand up, is that there are times where I've found myself leaning right over to read fine print on a small plate, and I can't read the ones at the back, and I find that so frustrating. So what we've done for a few of our displays over the years, we'll have a flyer, and also what that does, by people taking it, it's an opportunity. They might throw it in the bin, but it might also get folded up in their pocket
with the contact details for the club.
All the details.
Yep.
It's a memorable thing for them.
Yep.
And we've gained members over the years through that. So on the other side of the coin, what we're doing this year as well, and I'd been thinking about it for the last 12 months because I knew that this one would be a pressurised one. And so I made the call a little while back, and we've got a few of the members in the club that are currently finishing things off. We're actually going to do a 10th anniversary Wingnuts display with this year, obviously being their 10th anniversary. And I've contacted Wingnuts, and all things going well, we've got an in-principle agreement that they're going to be coming over and displaying with us.
Oh, we'll have to get Richard back on the show then.
So all things going well, and there's a few...
Hassle him about that one, that SPAD.
Yeah. So there's a few things still to consider there, but all things going well, we'll have that display on as well as the Jets. So one of the key things, and I think for any club's displays, that's really important is to at least have a roster.
Yep.
So it's a commitment from the club to have someone available that is clearly from the club to
man the stand,
person the stand, if you like.
Which is so difficult when there's so many models around and so many vendors.
Absolutely.
There's so many vendors. There's so much to see, especially in Melbourne Model Expo. There's so much to see.
But we're lucky because we've got it over 3 days. Now, Telford is not a 3-day show. I think it's a 1-day show. Heritage Con that our counterparts over in Canada had, that was a 1-day show.
Yeah.
How the heck do you squeeze all that modelling goodness into 1 day? I just don't understand how they do it.
Well, I mean, you have to sort of make sacrifices, don't you? Who's going to be the guy who mans the stand at, Telford or something,
in that case,
right?
you'd probably do what, half hour or an hour.
Yeah, but it's not just that. What I'm saying is these shows are only on for 1 day. I mean, they're not small shows. They're reasonably large.
Shows,
so you've got to, get there really early to set up your club display. then you're going to be there really late to disassemble it and drive home, etc. But
So that's what we're lucky with Expo. We can set up on a Friday night.
yes,
They open up so we can
Expo in Australia runs over a long weekend, so it's a public holiday on the Monday, so we can get in on the Friday night, do our bump in, and then we got 3 days of modelling goodness and pack up on the Monday evening and go home.
Yeah.
So one of the other ways that we've been able to have the stand manned, we've done it a few times, and the aim is to do it this year, particularly from the wingnut side of things, is to actually have a member or two behind the display modelling.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You're actually doing it.
Yeah.
So again, for your general public,
Yeah.
it gives an opportunity for people to come by and ask. And one of the things that we're looking at is, because I've done obviously a lot of review kits and build-ups for model art, to be able to talk, because some of those review models will be part of the display, and it will be an opportunity to share. And the view with that, and as with all my reviews, they're focused on, you want them in your in your cabinet built, rather than in your stash shelf.
Yep.
You know, they don't have to be show winners, as I keep saying over and over again. And it's about encouraging people. Just using basic techniques, you can get some really good results. So we'll see how that works out, but it's worked well in the past.
Yep.
I'll tell you who does that good at displays when they're doing their club displays is the Gundam builders. There's always guys busily building the latest robot or Gumpler or whatever it is at the show.
Yep.
And
Mecca, isn't it?
yeah, and also the paper ship guys who
Yeah.
build
the cardboard admiral.
cardboard guys. They're always cardboard admiral, isn't it?
It's all right, or the paper admiral.
They're always sitting there building away during the whole show.
And when you see this guy's work,
I know.
what he does out of those paper ship.
We'll get him
models.
on the show in June when we go to
the cardboard
yeah.
Commodore, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think that's it,
cardboard
something like
Commodore.
that.
His work is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind every time I see it.
Especially when it's out of cardboard. That's what blows me away.
And when you actually speak to him and find out how he does it,
Really nice guy.
yeah, he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But the other thing also with the club displays is you've got to make it interesting.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than everyone going, oh, we're going to do this display, and people just walk past it.
Got to have a theme.
Yep. And even some of the themes, you got to pick your themes. Some themes can bomb.
And look, it's a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
And I think also occasionally, not every time, and it is a big roll of the dice, is that if you're looking to attract members, occasionally have a display that just says, this is what we do. That it might be just enough for one or two new people to look at it and go, yeah, I like that, and I'll go along and see what these people are about.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's what I like when you do a display is what we do with our club a lot of the times is, especially the last one, it was a mixture of everything. We had cars. It had a theme, but it had cars, figures, armour, aircraft. Another thing it didn't have was ships for some reason.
Or spaceships.
I did have some submarines,
Yeah.
yeah. So it basically covered most of the stuff.
Yeah.
And look, some of the club displays are so clever in there. Now, who was it who did the ones on eggs? There's something had to do with an egg. And so the theme was it IPMS?
Yeah, IPMS have done eggs.
Yeah,
We've
I
done,
love their theme. They'll give you just an object, and every member of the club has to build a kit out of an object.
Yeah,
everyday
one
object.
year, about 6 months out, they just bought in a couple of big plastic containers of ping pong balls.
Yep.
And it was just, take as many as you need. Just come up with something. Model something. And I know for that year I decided, all right, well, I'm just going to cut one in half, make it a radar dish, and then out of plastic strip and that, I built a radar tower. Other people made plastic spiders and all sorts of crazy stuff, helicopters.
Yep.
And it was just really good fun. We did with IPMS, I think was it last year or the year before? No, it was last year. Gundam teddy bears, and we painted it up as a.
I tried to get Ian to buy one of them
A
at the last
character.
show, and he refused. I said, "Come on, we
No, not gonna happen. Actually, one I enjoy. Come to think of it, I've lost my train. You made me lose my train of thought, Dave. Keep going. I'll remember it in a minute.
Another year, one of the displays IPMS had was they bought a whole bunch of 72 scale Spitfire kits, and the challenge was just to paint it in whatever you wanted to do. Didn't have to be military, certainly not factual, and there were all sorts of crazy.
I remember there was one that was done up like steampunk.
Yeah.
And it looked fantastic. But that reminds me, yes, I remember back when I was in Axis Eagles, we'd had a club display. It was years ago. Hasegawa bought out a massive box set of all the Zeros.
Correct.
The Mitsubishi Zeros.
Oh, wow.
And the club went and bought this, and everyone got one or two kits to build. And we had basically every make of Zero.
Yep.
That was built
Yeah, we called that one Ground Zero.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
very clever.
Yeah.
And it was actually quite a good display. Yeah, it looked quite nice.
Yeah. And I reckon if you could somehow be omnipresent around the world and see where every one of those box sets, because they were like about $600 at the time. There were a pile of kits in there. And it was just one of the ways that the club was giving back to its membership.
Yeah.
I think every kit also came with artwork.
There was artwork, and we got some figures with it. So three of us were able to put some figures with the aircraft. Now I've gone and lost my train.
Well, gee, while you're there, I'm just jumping in. So that particular club, gave back to members by getting those kits, and the members could build the kits. Well, gee, all we get in our club is pizzas every once a year. I mean, they're on club.
But we do have a good raffle.
We do have a good raffle, yes.
Well, let's not make it a repeat of your ice cream thing in the when you were in the military.
Oh no!
You get lured to another club because you think they're getting something that your club's not. And then
that's right. The grass is not always green on the other side of the fence,
Correct.
Dave.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, but look at it. That is definitely bringing out another aspect of the club, and membership fees. What's it all about? And there is that responsibility too. And that's also a good way to create some dramas in the club if finances are not being managed well.
Absolutely. Well, to bring that around, I think we've just about covered all that. You got anything else there, Martin, you want to touch on in regards to clubs? Or
no?
Actually, just briefly tell us about your trip to South Australia and what your display was over there when you took the club across.
Well, people that have the unfortunate privilege of knowing me know that I have a particularly twisted sense of humour. And so we took over a display, and we held it as well last year at Melbourne for the Australian Model Expo. And under what seems like a seemingly safe theme of naval aviation.
Yes.
We entitled it The Flying Seaman. And I did a brochure for that, and we had a big board, and it was full of double entendres, and I've got to tell you, it was one of the most entertaining, both at South Australia and at the Australian Model Expo in Melbourne, just watching people.
What's the reaction?
Coming up to, particularly couples.
Yes.
And I remember I had a few couples where the guy was a modeler and the partner clearly wasn't.
Yep.
So the guy would be looking at the models and going, oh, wow, and really enjoying the display. Meanwhile, the partner's looking at the display at first sort of with the face crumpled up, and then as they read into it and she would get what I was saying.
Get the joke, yeah.
It was just gold. It was just gold. So, but that's just my twisted sense of humour.
Yeah. Okay, so just to recap, so first port of call is always your local IPMS, and as I said, just go to Google, type in IPMS. It'll bring you to their homepage, and there's a section there where you can click on your country, and that'll then take you into where perhaps a club is located near you. Your other option is to start a special interest group, but beware of the pitfalls that we mentioned, whether you should be incorporated or unincorporated. You can think about how and what you want to do in regards to having a club or just an association as such. And even go to your local IPMS if there's not a club near you and just ask those guys how to actually set a club up, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to steer you in the right direction and help you out. Even starting up a special interest group, even if there's a model club near you, there's nothing wrong with going and looking at having a special interest group on a subject of just armoured vehicles, for example, or whatever.
Also, keep in mind that people in special interest groups can build other things.
Yeah.
Right?
And
So
they can be members of different clubs as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, like we had Mr. Gibson on the other week.
Michael, yep.
Yep.
He's going to be coming back in about 2 episodes' time, I think. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we talked ships the whole time, but he builds other things.
He
so
does.
Unless you talk to people, you won't know what they're capable of.
Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. All right, well, I think we'll wrap that up there. We've gone over, you know what, hour and a half seems to be our mark now.
It is,
it's,
We're enjoying the sound of our own voices, I think.
Yes, we do indeed. All right, so Martin, thank you very much for coming in tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And
A pleasure.
we'll definitely have you back on the show again soon. And
Careful what you wish for.
any parting remarks from you, Martin?
No, look, I think the key thing when you go looking for clubs, or even if you're a long-term member, I think it's really important just to be a little self-reflective and just to be clear on what you're looking for and what you can contribute to.
Absolutely.
Don't just go there thinking these people are there to feed me. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely.
You put in, you can take out.
Ian,
What?
sign off.
Sign off.
Yes.
Well, since Julian
What?
stole my sign off, I've got to have come up with a new one. So,
Oh, good. Let's hear it.
I didn't feel
photo, which is your friend.
Very good. Julian.
See,
Thanks, Julian. And that's the show for...
I didn't have anything to say anyway. It's all right.
Okay, thanks very much for listening, and we'll catch up with you again in a fortnight. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode, and we'll be back in a fortnight with our next show. In the meantime, don't forget to drop along and have a listen to our good friends Stuart Clark and Anthony Goodman at the Scale Model Podcast. Just type in that name into your favourite podcast app and it will bring it up. Also, don't forget that we now have a shop open. It is selling T-shirts and paraphernalia with On The Bench logos. So just go to www.shop.spreadshirt.com.au/On The Bench and have a look at some of the products that are available for you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.